Welcome to TXAPA Live. My name is Jim Warren. Glad to have everybody here today. We are ready to get started. Hopefully you've got everything ready. You're ready to go. Corey Schwartz is with us today. He's the director over at the HMAC Center. And Corey, welcome aboard.
Hey, Jim, thanks for the welcome there. Before we get started, I just wanted to, I noticed one of those slides there. It was a promo for the HMAC and hiring a full-time employee.
Yep.
And, you know, if you're out there and you're looking for an exciting career to join a great team, we'd love for you to turn in an application. You can just go to our website at TXHMAC.org and do that. The other thing is August is just around the corner and a lot of people retiring, Jim. And if you're looking for a part-time job, we are always looking for people for that position as well. So
you weren't talking to me, were you?
No, I'm not talking to you in particular, Jim. It's not time for you to retire. You still got some time there. But I guess we'll get kicked off and get started here. We're going to be talking about certifications and chain of custody and reporting processes. And joining us today, I have Travis Patton and Tommy Smith from TxDOT. We'll start off, Travis. How you doing?
Doing well, Corey. How you doing?
Oh, yeah. Tell us a little bit about what your role is at TxDOT.
Absolutely. So I'm the bituminous branch manager. My role here is to manage the central materials and testing lab for hot mix across the state. We handle all of the test procedures, all of the specifications, all of your site manager templates, provide field support for any forensics, any production placement issues you may be having, and overall just here as a source for both the districts and for contractors.
Man, what do you do in your spare time?
He's got some kids, I know that.
Spare time, what's that?
And Tommy, how are you doing, Tommy?
I'm pretty good. Thanks, Corey.
Yeah.
How about you?
And why don't you tell us a little bit about your role?
Well, I wear a lot of hats at TxDOT, like a lot of people are employees of TxDOT. But a few of the roles I handle specifically, I'm in the QAP department, where we lead a team of accreditation. We do labs. We directly oversee the certification program and laboratory accreditation program. I'm a lead with the metrology group, integrally involved in design bid build QAP, division IA manager for design build side, and as you know, co-chair there with you with the steering committee.
Yeah. Jim, interesting fact about Tommy
hats.
is Tommy can build houses. Tommy can build pools. He is the all-around carpenter kind of guy too. I know this for a fact. I've seen some of his work. So he does a great job.
I bet with
there.
the cost of lumber right now, he's not building too many houses.
Probably not.
Well, let's go and get started, man. I'm excited about the program today.
Yeah, let's get started. And the first thing is, you know, thinking about QC, QA and the foundation, I kind of see it as one of the foundations to the program is certifications. Because if you don't have those, you know, how do you know the systems that are in place and those type of things, that the testing's being done the right way? And that's one of the things we're going to be talking about. And so, Tommy, I'm going to kind of just lead you off here is you know, that kind of falls in your ballpark of your expertise. What is certification and why do we have it?
Well, yeah, it's important to start with a little background of where we are and why the program even exists. So the Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, Chapter 23 is based on, you know, transportation. Get technical, 637B is the subpart that really hones in on certifications and speaks to one aspect of it, in particular certifications for our interest today. But there's certain things that the CFR just straight up brings out that we have to incorporate and that you'll see reflected through the center. You'll see reflected through the quality assurance program manual as well. Things such as formal training, offer that, hands-on demonstrations, the practical application of the program. Proficiency, sampling and testing, some on-job training, which reflects again in those opportunities that the center puts up. If you need training, it's there. You know, a written examination, requalification periods, documenting all this is obviously essential when FHWA considers it. So we try to cover also what's not acceptable when we review the program, and it's something we're always doing is looking at the program. And a lot of people misconstrue, perhaps you're an engineer, you feel you may be qualified, but it directly, explicitly calls out that that's not an option as a PE or an engineering and training. You have to actually still be certified to do some of this acceptance testing. So you'll see that, and this criteria has been defined, and we have taken that into the quality assurance program in our two programs, and to be able to address compliance, something they're looking at us to make sure that we're doing, and we say what we're doing or doing what we're saying. Kind of, you've heard that figure of speech. But ultimately, we consider the program, it really has two fundamental purposes: to provide confidence in the acceptance testing that's performed in the project or at a field location. And two, being it's federally funded and there's money involved, we want to utilize the taxpayers' dollars, and you'll probably hear that multiple times this morning. We have a responsibility to ensure that we're getting the most value out of these programs.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to note too that we get audited by you guys. The HMAC gets audited by TxDOT, but TxDOT's also being audited by the federal government. And that's the important things of kind of like the checks and balances in this whole system. I mean, a lot of people think, well, why are y'all so hard there at the center? Well, we're hard because we're going to be audited. Y'all are going to be audited, and so we got to make sure we're doing everything above reproach and doing everything as the contracts and the documents say. So
yeah, I mean, you're using tax dollar money. I mean, and so I mean, the whole purpose of all these checks and balances to make sure this money is used wisely and it's used appropriately. And so it makes sense. I want the checks and balances. I'm a taxpayer. We're all taxpayers. We want to make sure this money is used properly.
Yeah, and I know we've been talking, the three of us have kind of talked at different times. And Travis, you have something really interesting. You brought this perspective of qualification when it's in regards to certification. Do you mind kind of talking about that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the idea is just because you're certified doesn't mean you're qualified. Yes, you have, let's say, a 1A next to your name, but if you're not confident in running that test, you shouldn't be running that test. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, people see a certification attached to something and they think that it means it was done right. It means it was done safely. And that's not always the case. And so the example I always like to use is professional engineering license. If you have a PE in civil engineering, for example, there are so many different substructures within civil engineering. You can have a structural engineering, you can be water, you can be transportation, right? There's geotechnical, there's all these different things. So if you go to a bridge and it has a PE on it, you assume that it was, one, built correctly, two, built safely, and you feel pretty good that you and your family traveling across this bridge is not going to fall down. But what if, somebody that, say, had a PE in transportation design, the structural aspect of that bridge? Well, he's probably not competent to be designing that bridge. While he is certified, he is not qualified. And it is his professional duty to make sure that he's only operating within his wheelhouse. And the same can be said for 1A, 1B, level 2, Ag 101, and really all of the soils as well.
So what I heard is and you're not designing bridges, right? Just making sure my family travels over them.
I did a little bit in school. Nothing too dangerous.
Let's get someone that does a lot of that.
Absolutely.
Because my family's traveling over that. We're going to be headed to vacation pretty soon. Another thing though is thinking about that. Travis, how does that apply to like a technician? Let's say I've been on a soils job or a base job for 6-7 months, and now I'm going to a hot mix job. What are some tips that you would give them to kind of get back to where they have to be there? So what do we do to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing is there's never a bad question, right? Ask the question before you submit the results, before you run the test. You have to keep in mind on the technician side that each one of these results could be worth, upwards of $60,000. That's a huge implication to both the contractor and a TxDOT. Whether you accept it or it's being failed, you want to make sure you're doing it correctly and you're not costing somebody money, because regardless of whether it's passing or failing, you're going to cost somebody some money. If you don't have a working knowledge of something, ask a neighboring technician, right? Ask your supervisor to provide some additional training. I realize this may not always be the popular choice, right? Supervisors probably don't want to be spending additional time for these people, but think of the implication if you do it wrong. You could be coming back and removing and replacing at cost, right? To say, oh, we placed 5 days worth of paving to find out you did it wrong. Now we're going to come back and we're going to have to remove all of this, and you cost me $200,000, $300,000. And I've actually been on projects where I've seen that happen on the 1B side. So don't put yourself in that position.
Mm-hmm. Asking question is always a great way to move forward. This kind of rolls us into the QC/QA program. Tommy, could you explain us a little bit more what the difference between QC and QA is?
Yeah, we often know and understand, and people in the industry hear that term, quite a bit. And it's an important relationship between the two. And we know both roles are going to perform testing, but really are doing so for fundamentally different reasons. But when I speak about it, I think of how FHWA views QC and QA, and maybe we already have that understanding as well. But QC, as we know, has a responsibility to provide quality material, right? And the ingredients to a recipe, we could say. And you're looking for a final product, something with quality and an expectation of a certain performance. And it's their role to do that, to provide that. And although that's very important, our world's all about QA. This is what we base acceptance testing on. And if you think about it like a second string check, this is how we get our confidence and what the acceptance is actually based on again. And that's how FHWA views it. But we have that QC to assure us of that we're getting what we want, again, that expectation. So if you think about it in those terms, it may help break it down a little bit from that QC QA role, but really it has a more intricate relationship, and I'm not sure I might have covered or spoke to that in its entirety. So Travis, I don't know, you're the expert in QC QA and hot mix and how that comes in, but I tend to speak to it programmatically and the way the QAP defines it. But is there anything, Travis, that you want to speak to on that?
Yeah, so from just an operational standpoint, right, the idea is we can't obviously have TxDOT slowing down the project, testing every single possible test on both the contractor TxDOT side, producing quality, laying quality. We don't have the manpower, we don't have the time. And quite honestly, a lot of the time the contractor wants to get out a lot of production, and we just would slow them down. So we have this program that's QCQA. Really, it's the contractor's responsibility to make sure they're still producing what they said they were going to produce. They're going to place everything as if it's all being tested. And then TxDOT has what we call random numbers, right, where we go and we have localized areas that are completely random. And the idea is whichever tests we pull are going to represent the quality of that entire project. And so if the contractor is doing their due diligence and they're producing what they said they were going to do, and they're providing the best construction practices like they should be, everything should be good, right? We do this one test and the contractor maybe gets bonus off of it. However, if they're not doing their due diligence, the idea is that this one test will catch their flaws and they will be penalized accordingly. And really, that's just a smarter way of testing to ensure we're getting the quality.
That makes sense. When you said random numbers, like I know Corey and we've dealt with some of that in investigations and stuff, it kind of negates the purpose, right? Like if you're providing random numbers up front, like kind of sidestepping, or two, if QA is providing QC data, that's kind of backwards too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If you're, telling the contractor where you're going to pull those cores, a good contractor maybe still treats the entire project the same way. But you are going to have some individuals out there that are going to probably cut corners and focus a little bit more time and effort on those localized areas that they know are going to dictate their pay. I know if I were a contractor, I would hopefully still try to do everything 100%. But if you know you're getting paid and everything on your job is based on those cores, I think it's human nature that you're going to spend a little extra time and at least maybe triple check that location. Whereas on other ones, maybe you roll it one time, a few times, and you say, I think I got density. Those other areas, for a fact you're going to have density because you are going to do that double, triple, quadruple check on it, right?
Travis, I know the specification tells us this, but when you look at your random numbers, how do they work? When should the contractor get them? How does TxDOT get them in that type of situation? Let's stick with roadway construction.
So absolutely. So there's two sets of random numbers. There's both production and placement. TxDOT has a random number generator. The 1A for the project that's in the plant for TxDOT will generate these numbers. He'll have them with him. He will give those random numbers to his 1B every day for that lot. And so they each have their own set of random numbers. During production, he will not let people know which truck he's going to pull from. But essentially, if he knows he's doing 2,000 tons a day So he knows the total tonnage. You get these random decimal numbers, you multiply it by the tonnage. It tells you at what tonnage you'll be pulling samples from a truck. As that truck is being loaded up, he'll walk outside and he'll flag the truck down and say, this is the truck we're testing from. At that point, TxDOT will either do the pulling of the random samples himself, or a contractor representative would do it under the watchful eye of TxDOT. The idea there is that we're maintaining custody of the sample along the way. We don't have some magical, what they used to call golden bags set aside to guarantee that they've met all of the specifications. The idea is that it is random. At that time, they would split it into 3 equal samples. The contractor gets one, the TxDOT representative on the project gets one, and then one is set aside for a referee bag. In terms of the placement cores, it's similar. Once they are past sublot 1 and they're getting into sublot 2, the 1B TxDOT representative at that point will look at his random number and calculate where they locate down the project and how far is the offset off of the joint. Based on his random numbers, the length of the project, he should be able to calculate that. He will go mark a location and he will stand there and witness the contractor pull the cores, and at which time they go into a security bag. The idea is core custody, right? Once again, these dictate 100% of the payment of a project. We need to make sure for both the contractor and for TxDOT safety, right, that these are done correctly, because even if, we gave it to the contractor and we 100% trust them, at the end of the day, if we lost core custody, we can't accept those results.
Mm-hmm. How about on the production side, when in regards to chain of custody, how does that work, and how do we need to make sure that we are staying in line so that we're not losing where that sample went?
Yeah, on the production side, like I said, either TxDOT will pull the sample or the contractor will pull the sample under the watchful eye of TxDOT, at which time TxDOT is present the entire time when those samples are being broken down, split into 3 separate bags. At that point, they can hand their bag to the contractor. They take their bag and then they set one aside for a referee. In which case, the TxDOT and the contractor are in a disagreement. Then it will come down to MCD to provide a referee test.
Mm-hmm. So Tommy and I on the steering committee, and I know you've been called in for different for your expertise once we're dealing with some different types of investigations where chain of custody came into play. And one of the last ones that we did, and this happens more frequently than we want, and that's kind of why we're talking about it, is we want to stop this from happening. One of the last ones that happened, and either Tommy or Travis, if y'all want to hit this, is the data chain of custody and how data was lost and those type of things, and keeping in a good order and making sure those results were secure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we just kind of harped on the idea of core custody, sample custody. The whole idea is, one is the sample is supposed to represent the entire project or this entire sublot. And we're putting a lot of faith in this, and we're going to pay based on this very minimal testing. And the key to that is it has to be random. So then we get into data chain custody. So if I am a TxDOT representative and I do a test and I don't have a computer, or I want to compare with a contractor or any of these number of excuses, and then I give my data to, say, Corey, which is representing a contractor, Corey then goes and looks at the data and he enters it and sends it to the district lab. Well, you see, the issue is I've actually just lost data custody. That's just as bad, if not worse, than losing core custody. Because at the end of the day, we like to believe everybody is honest. But if I give you my raw data, that's even worse than a core, because at that point, you could manufacture data that benefits you, right? So losing data custody is probably worse because they don't even have to do the work. And at the end of the day, I hope everybody is honest, but there is always that doubt. If everything is getting bonus, how do I pay you bonus when I know that you had the data before it got inputted into site management?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Travis. That kind of brings us into the implications. What happens when we run into these things where chain of custody has been broken And Tommy, I know you sit on the steering committee. Do you mind talking a little bit about kind of the implications and the what can happen to an individual that does this?
Sure. There's a lot of time, effort goes into these investigations. I mean, we have multiple people from industry and TxDOT side that compose that certification steering committee. And I can tell you in general terms that for whatever reason, kind of like Travis said, there are individuals out there that for whatever motive, we don't know. I mean, you don't know, but will deliberately, intentionally manipulate data. Matter of fact, I was reading an article earlier. I subscribe to this Roads and Bridges magazines. I don't know if you guys get that or not, but there was an article on there. New York City transit track inspectors skipped inspections and falsified reports. And so the inspector general opened an inquiry after track debris began falling down on cars on elevated tracks.
Ouch.
So you have this process in place that's for safety and control and ensuring, again, like we talked about the taxpayers, dollar and stuff, bottom line, but money is involved with purse strings, and that typically tends to be the motive, but sometimes we don't know. But this is a serious matter. People are watching. I mean, TxDOT has a whole program called TxDOT Watch. It's anonymous reporting mechanism. We have a compliance division. We have random audits that go into that to look at all these elements of fraud. So it doesn't make any sense to do. You're really putting yourself in a precarious situation. So, Corey, what can happen? And I'll just, in general terms, we'll speak to the fact that, hey, man, you can lose your job. You like the career, the industry, you could be banned from the industry overall. Consider your reputation, your company's reputation. The state could lose funding. FHWA could withhold reimbursement. And we're talking about large sums of money. And depending on the scope and how long this went on or what was involved, could be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you could even get jail time, right? So really it affects everyone in the industry, everybody, even down to the taxpayer that we were talking about. And even firms can be banned from pre-qualification people who bid on a project. So it has huge implications if you think about it. And right, Corey, what's funny, right? All the things I just said, I didn't just randomly pull out of the air. Those are things that we've seen. That we've had to deal with. That have happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and more frequently than when we would like. We probably meet as a steering committee, just so everyone knows, it's made up of 10 members, 5 industry members, and 5 TxDOT members. Tommy and myself co-chair that. And we probably meet on a quarterly basis and have to discuss different things when it comes to investigations, anything from proficiency samples, which kind of goes back to the top of the, what we started with the federal regulations and those type of things, Tommy, of proficiencies are a requirement that we have to do. And people don't understand when we make them inactive because they didn't do it, that we're meeting those requirements, that we're doing what the contracts say. And yeah, it's a tough thing sitting on that steering committee, but we've kind of hit all the big topics. We hit certification, why it's important. We've hit chain of custody. Travis kind of took us through the different ones from production to placement to the data chain of custody, and Tommy kind of finished us up here with the steering committee and the implications of what happens when we're not following those protocols. So as we get ready to leave here, I just wanted to give each of you an opportunity, one final thought, something to kind of, if you want someone to take away from today, what is it? Travis, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think for me, being on the hot mix side of things, and what I see is really comes down to core custody, data custody, and production custody, because that's at the heart of everything. I do think we still have issues with, you're qualified, but, or you're certified, but not necessarily qualified. But I do also see a lot of people, and maybe that ties into this, right? Just not knowing what these cores, this production, and this data represents. And they do things blindly without realizing the repercussions that, even if everything is being done in an honest manner, we cannot accept results that have been lost, out of our possession, out of our sight. So if anything, I would say hold on to that data. You never give your data away. You never give those samples to somebody else ahead of time, because what you do matters, and one test for one cell plot can be, $60,000. So we're not talking small money.
Thanks, Travis. Tommy?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't have anything to say. Travis did a nice job there. No, I'm just kidding. I did a nice job. But I think it comes down to, accountability and integrity. The program, it's a good program. It has a lot of controls and checks and balances in place, but it doesn't work unless you're involved. And that's all the way down, from company level, the agency, TxDOT, all the way down to the individual, the technician that we're talking about today. And that's a great point Travis brought up too, is, when in the example you gave about switching from hot mix to soil, take a minute, understand the scope of the project, look at it, break out those references, become familiar with them, ask questions. But take pride, have some integrity in what you do. And that's how that accountability will be tiered out. And ultimately, we're all doing our job.
Mm-hmm. Jim, you got any final words that after listening to this you'd like to share?
I'm impressed that, it's great that we've got a great system. It's sad that we have to talk about this issue, unfortunately. I would like to ask the gentleman again, what was the name of the reporting organization that if someone sees something, they can actually say something and not condone something? So could you, I think that might have been Travis or Tommy. What was the name of the
Texas Watch.
Texas Watch, and where do they get access to that?
I think you can Google it if possible. You get just kind of speaking out of turn here, but I don't know if it's internal to our agency only as a mechanism for state employees to be able to anonymously report things. But if it's not something that as a contractor, something you saw, man, escalate that. Maybe you're in a precarious situation where your supervisor told you to do something ain't right. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, feel free to reach out to the steering committee, contact the HMAC, contact myself, anybody at MTD, and we'll be able to help you escalate that concern.
Yeah, Jim, that's where majority of our investigations come from, is someone emailing the HMAC at info@hmac.org,
okay,
at texasasphalt.org. I apologize for that.
Good deal.
That's where most of that our investigations come from. I guess if I'm going to leave with a thought, it's don't be prideful. Ask questions. If you don't know something, ask. There's nothing wrong with it. Just, what you don't want to do is just do something because someone's telling you to do it. Ask some questions and ask people that you trust. But as we end, I just want to again tell Travis and Tommy, thank you for joining us today. And Jim, thanks for hosting us like always here. And hope everyone has a great week, and we will see you next time.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you guys again. Big thanks to Corey and Travis and Tommy. Thank you again for joining us today on TXAPA Live. Next time we are going to, next Thursday, we are going to be taking a little bit deeper dive in Tex 400. A big, lot of work's been done with that over the last couple of years, trying to reduce some things there, particularly on the sampling side. And so we want to spend some time, and Corey will be back with David DeWitzik, and they're going to spend some time talking about Tex 400 next week. So in the meantime, be safe out there, everybody. Take care, and God bless, and ever forward.